Lightweight and welterweight are absolutely stacked right now, but weirdly enough, there's been zero movement. Let me walk you through what's happening behind the scenes. In the past few weeks, there have been no big fight announcements, no timeline updates, nothing. Even the fighters themselves, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria, are openly confused whenever they're asked about the date and the location of their next fight. But now, thanks to the latest episode of Weighing In with Josh Thompson and Big John McCarthy, we might finally have a possible explanation. According to Josh, the UFC could be deliberately holding things up as they wait for the ESPN deal to expire and the new Netflix partnership to kick in. Why? Because in the current ESPN model, the UFC gets paid up front regardless of how well a pay-per-view sells. But with Netflix coming in where actual pay-per-view numbers will directly affect profits, the UFC will want to launch that era with super fights, big names, and massive stakes. Josh thinks the UFC doesn't want to risk someone like Islam or Ilia losing before that new structure begins. Right now, they're two of the biggest stars the company's trying to build around, and with star power already on the decline in recent years, the UFC might be saving their appearances for a moment that actually matters financially. So yeah, it's frustrating for fans, but it might just be a business play, a high-stakes waiting game.
And there's going to be a delay, I think, for the meantime, as these guys, as the dust settles at the lightweight division. The UFC is, I think it really is looking at the Ilia Topuria and Islam fight if he beats JDM. And they would probably want to do it right, probably one of the first fights going into their new deal, their new TV deal. Sure. That's probably what they're looking for, is like, hey, how can we match this to be a super fight? So do they take the chance? Do they take that chance and giving him Arman Tsarukyan between now and the time that Islam fights? I think that's kind of where we're at right now. The UFC is going, hey, we waited this long for Conor and Chandler. We waited this long for John Jones and Tom Aspinall. Do we wait on this and just say like, hey, let's drag this out until we get to the TV deal? Because if JDM wins, and let's just leave Ilia Topuria on the side and be like, you guys may have to fight each other. I don't know, maybe Gaethje and Arman need to fight.
In a surprising twist, Daniel Cormier just clapped back at Michael Bisping after Mike suggested Ilia Topuria might be pulling a John Jones by avoiding Arman Tsarukyan. Bisping compared the Topuria-Tsarukyan tension to the John Jones-Tom Aspinall situation, questioning if the lightweight champ was starting to duck the #1 contender, but DC wasn't having it. On his YouTube channel, he fired right back, calling out Bisping for doing the exact same thing when he was champ. DC reminded everyone that back in the day, Bisping chose to fight 46-year-old Dan Henderson in a feel-good revenge bout instead of facing the rightful top contender Yoel Romero, who was on a tear at the time. And when GSP came calling, Bisping jumped at that blockbuster fight too, skipping Romero once again. According to DC, if Topuria is picking his opponents, it's no different than what Bisping did himself when the bigger fights were on the table. DC actually says he agrees Topuria should eventually fight Arman, but he also understands why he might not want to jump into that matchup right now, especially since Tsarukyan pulled out of his title shot against Islam at the last minute. So while fans are chasing El Matador with duck memes and Arman's literally sprinting after a real duck in the streets, DC is out here explaining that the Georgian has got a point. We'd play the clip, but Cormier has been dropping copyright claims left and right. Man's out here hunting content creators for lunch money. So instead, here's what he said, quote, "Michael, I understand the frustration, but Mike, you were on the championship side. When you had the belt, you wanted revenge on Dan Henderson, so you fought him. But if there was a bigger fight for you, George St. Pierre for that matter, you took it. Even though Yoel Romero at the time was probably the more justified #1 contender. The bigger fight was GSP and you took it." End quote. What do you think? Is Topuria ducking Arman, or is this just the business of chasing the biggest fights? Leave your comments below. Movsar Evloev confronted Petr in his hometown. In a recent podcast appearance, Movsar revealed a story that left fans stunned. It all started when the undefeated featherweight was asked about fighting fellow Russian fighters. He made it clear that Zubaira Tukhugov and Zabit Magomedsharipov were off limits, as their shared roots and traditions wouldn't allow it. But when the topic shifted to Petr Yan, he said a fight could happen if he ever moved down to 135, purely as a sporting challenge, given Yan's championship status. status. Somehow that message got twisted. A clipped version of his interview made it seem like he was refusing to fight Zubaira out of respect, but had no issue calling out Yan. The former bantamweight champ didn't take it lightly. He fired off a tweet dismissing Evloev's resume, telling him to accomplish something first before talking about fights, along with a few other choice words. Rather than engage in an online back and forth, Movsar took action the moment he saw Peter's heated response to a chopped up interview clip. Instead of arguing over social media, he booked a flight and went straight to Peter's city to settle things face to face. So basically, I'll tell this story about me and Petr. I was giving an interview when someone asked if I'd ever fight Zubaira or Zabit Magomedsharipov since they're both in my division. I said no, not even for the belt. Then they asked about Petr Yan, hypothetically. If I moved down to 135 because I've also fought at 135, I said yes. It would be an interesting fight since he's a former UFC champion. Petr and I have trained together and share a friendly relationship, but if we fight, it's purely for sporting reasons, not because we're enemies. With Zubaira, it's different. He's my compatriot and our elders wouldn't approve. We can spar and share experience, but competing against him wouldn't be right. And someone chopped up my interview and sent Petr a clip where I said I wouldn't fight Zubaira, but would fight him. He reacted emotionally and posted something online, telling me to achieve something first and saying things he shouldn't have. I was in Moscow at the time, so I immediately booked a ticket to fly over to him. I didn't want an internet back and forth. It's better to talk face to face. By the time I arrived, he had already deleted it. When I pressed him for it, he backed off, said he hadn't even watched the full interview, and admitted he jumped to conclusions over a highlight. Conor McGregor just took a massive legal blow, and it couldn't come at a worse time for his UFC return. The former double champ officially lost his appeal in a high-profile sexual assault civil suit. McGregor initially claimed he had bombshell testimony that would clear his name, but not only was that evidence withdrawn, he's now facing perjury allegations for trying to use it in the first place. The Dublin court wasn't having it. The judge made it clear there was no valid reason to overturn the jury's original decision, and the appeal was dismissed entirely. McGregor wasn't present in court for the ruling. All of this is happening while the Notorious finally re-entered the drug testing pool for the first time in 10 months. He shared photos and videos of his first blood and urine samples, officially starting the clock on his return to the octagon. So now you've got two versions of Conor running in parallel, one preparing for a UFC comeback and the other buried in legal controversy. Whether the UFC still moves forward with booking his fight is up in the air, but one thing's for sure, this lawsuit loss just became a massive distraction in the middle of his long-awaited return. Do you think we will ever get to see Conor back inside the UFC octagon? Would you be interested in the Michael Chandler matchup or maybe even a Nate Diaz trilogy? Leave your comments below. That's it from MMA Psycho. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.